G'day, friends, and welcome to the Move to Costa Rica podcast. I'm your host, Malcolm Hill, and I have somebody who I think is perhaps one of the most well-traveled foreigners of Costa Rica, and you're going to hear about her story. So that's Samantha Wei.
Thank you for having me.
So the first thing that I want to mention, Sam, is you've got a really successful and really helpful blog. You've been here in Costa Rica now for 8 years. In my research, I did find that out. But can you give us a quick overview of how mytanfeet.com came about?
So I did move to Costa Rica in 2012. I met my husband, Jason, in 2010. And he's Costa Rican. And back then I was still in college, so we did the whole long distance thing for 2 years. So when I finally moved to Costa Rica in 2012, I was only 23, but I was trying to find more information about Costa Rica that related to me, someone who was not retired yet. But everything that I kept finding on the on Google, was all for retirees, and it was mostly just for that age group. So when I moved to Costa Rica, for the first 6 months, me and Jason, we like to travel. We've always traveled. That's how we would see each other over the 2 years. And so we would go around Costa Rica, and I love taking photos, and he loves, we just love being on camera and taking photos. And I always loved to write. And I used to have a blog growing up, so I was used to that, writing online and posting and things like that. So I thought, I'm gonna write a blog, but it was more of a journal, for fun, because that's kind of how it was back then. Everything was just hey, what I did today, kind of blogging.
Well, back in 2012, it was a different world on the internet,
it was
right?
So different. Yeah, no influencers. I had just signed up for Instagram, which gave you everything in chronological order. There were no stories, and Facebook was not for advertising. It was just to connect with your college friends and see what classes you had together. That was what it was back then. So I thought, why not start a blog, a website, just to journal my life here, because a lot of my friends, when I graduated college, they went off into medical school or stayed in the US or went straight to work. I was the only one that moved to another country. So, and my family, they really wanted to know what it was like. None of us had been to Costa Rica before. So it just grew from there. Jason came up with the name. Actually, it was after one of our days. We were in Guanacaste, one of our days off from work in Guanacaste, and we were just traveling around visiting a lot of beaches. And he thought, hey, that would be a cute name for a travel blog about sunny, tropical Costa Rica. And so we just started that, and that's pretty much how it began. And then of course it did grow into something more, because it turned from just a journal diary sort of thing to hey, we can actually make some a business out of it. It's something we love to do. And I think there was back then a huge gap on the internet for something like this. So we just thought, let's go for it. It was a good time for us to start a new project.
The website for mytanfeet.com, it's amazing. There's just photos of every single different part of Costa Rica you could imagine, from waterfalls to coastlines to volcanoes to the highest altitude areas. It's insane. It's absolutely amazing. It's the coolest resource ever. Early life in the US. Tell us about that.
Well, I grew up in Washington State, in the capital city, Olympia. And then I went to college at UW in Seattle. And that pretty much is my life in the US, because I moved when I was 23. So I graduated college when I was 22. I worked for 1 year in Olympia to save up money to move here. And then I moved at 23, and I'm 31, almost 32 now. So it's been a long journey, and I mean, all my 20s are basically here. And yeah, who I was when I was 23. I mean, for anybody, whether they move or whatever, you're not the same person when you're in your early 20s versus now I'm in my early 30s. But I think definitely Costa Rica has given me a bigger push into growing up and learning about the world and things like that. So.
Your family's up in Washington. Who have you got up there? Mom and dad, brothers and sisters?
Mom and dad, and a brother and sister-in-law. So they're still in Olympia. And my parents, they're originally from Taiwan. They immigrated to the US. And so me and my brother were born in the US, but we have gone back to Taiwan many times. And we still have a lot of family there.
You understand like the cultures of Taiwan, which is like totally different to the US, which is totally different to Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, yeah.
That's a huge mix of cultures. How did you meet your husband, Jason?
2010, I was studying veterinarian school. And so I decided to join one of the like volunteer abroad programs. And this one was in Central America, but that trip specifically was Nicaragua, Honduras. And they had a collection of like dental, medical, veterinary, all of the health together. And so I joined the organization as a volunteer. So we went to Nicaragua, Honduras for 2 weeks, and he was actually working for that organization. So that's how we had met. So it was kind of a whirlwind thing. Like I met him, I was only there for 2 weeks. And then after the trip was over in Honduras, I went back to Costa Rica with him for like, I don't know, like 4 days. And then I had to go finish school for 2 years. So I still had a year of college left. And so I visit him like every break. So I went like winter break, spring break, and then in the fall, I believe. But so I would only see him once every few months because back then he didn't renew his U.S. visa, and he was working a lot with this organization, so he didn't have any time to go to the U.S. But I had, time between breaks, between quarters, and then the year that I was working, I would just visit him as much as I could because I wasn't like confined by school, but it was more just trying to save as much money as possible. And in that year, we would meet in other countries. We met in Mexico and we met in the Bahamas and Nicaragua again.
Was the plan always to move together to Costa Rica?
I think so. Like, we didn't like explicitly make that plan until I graduated college. And then like, I was kind of in that period of my life where I was like, I'm not sure if I want to go directly into veterinary school right away. Because I was pretty burnt out from college, and I wanted to take this opportunity to see if I moved down there first, to see if the relationship would work out. It's very important because we had been long distance. We never spent like a long period of time together, or like did like that dating phase. It would just be like me move down there and move in together, see how it goes. And so I had planned it like after I graduated college, because I kind of had in the back of my mind, I'm going to take this year, I'm going to see how the next couple years goes with Jason. And like I had really good grades in college, so if I want to do veterinary school, I have no problem to go back and like go into school again. So
what did your family say when you told them you were moving to Costa Rica to move in with Jason?
Honestly, I don't really recall their exact reaction. I think it was a very subtle, like, sure, okay, yeah, like, we'll see how that goes. Like, my parents, I think they knew that I've always been the kind of person, like, I had always talked about my dream was to live abroad in France. That was my initial dream. And I'd always talked about that and like living abroad and learning another language and things. So I think they were kind of like, okay, you need to get out of the US for a little bit, but they had never met Jason and they never been to Costa Rica. So, they were, parents are going to worry. They had no idea what their daughter was getting into. So they came to visit me like 3 months after I moved. But surprisingly, they were like pretty okay with it on the surface. I don't know how they were feeling inside really, because they didn't really tell me. Because, they were like, okay, you're 23, you need to like get out of the house and like go experience life a little bit. So yeah, I think that they felt like the concern that parents would feel, but at the same time they were like, be free, like learn what life is and go see the world. So I
Go
was very
struggle
happy.
and make mistakes on your own.
Yeah, they wanted me to go and like get out of the house, like make your own, like do your own thing. So I was really lucky. Like I'm really lucky to have parents who they supported me, my decision.
When they came down, obviously now it's been like 8 years. Have they been down a few times now?
Yeah, they come back. They came back last year. They come back around like once every 2 years. I think they've been here 4 times so far. and my brother has been once. They really like it, and interestingly, like Taiwan is also kind of a tropical country, so there's a lot of similarities between Taiwan and Costa Rica, like climate and fruits and mountains, and they have seen the blog grow from the beginning to now, and so one of their main concerns, I mean, like it is a legit concern in Costa Rica, is how are you going to make money? Like how are you going to work here? Because it's like the wages are different. I don't have the same titles because I'm not like, I didn't grow up here, so I don't have my bachelor degree and everything. It doesn't, and so that was like their main concern. So they saw it grow from the very beginning to now. And so I think they're a lot more comfortable with that idea. You know what I mean? We're healthy and we have a healthy relationship and we're happy. So I think, health, my dad always tells me health is first. So, I think that's what any parent would wish for their kids. They're healthy and they're able to like sustain a very healthy lifestyle without stress.
A lot of kids in the US have the opportunity to study Spanish when they're at school.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have that opportunity, or did you arrive in Costa Rica with like zero Spanish skills?
I didn't study Spanish in the US. I grew up speaking English and Mandarin, but so in the US, as you probably know, they don't really emphasize like the second language. So when I was growing up, like we had the opportunity to choose one in, I think, like 6th grade. And so I chose French because even at that age, when I was 10 or 11 years old, my dream was to move to France and live in France. So actually, I had studied French for many years. I did it in middle school, high school, and in college. And then I met Jason, and it's so funny because I remember vividly, like the day they gave us the form to choose what language. It was German, Japanese, French, or Spanish. And all my friends chose Spanish because they were like, oh, it's more useful and it's a lot easier. And I was like, no, I'm never going to need Spanish. I'm moving to France. I'm going to learn French. Like, screw Spanish. I don't need to know it. And then I never moved to France. I haven't been there yet. And I moved to a Spanish-speaking country. So when I moved here, because I knew I was going to move here. So I bought a textbook and I would study like on my own occasionally, but I never took like proper classes. I still have never taken like a university class or a proper class or anything like that. So when I moved here, I didn't really know any Spanish, like very basics, just like, hi, how are you kind of thing. My name is blah, blah, blah. Which was something that I don't regret it, but I wish that I had really studied harder before I moved because it would have made the transition a lot easier. But as soon as I got here, I remember like distinctly, like we were living in Playas del Coco in Guanacaste, and we were actually managing a hotel back then. And Jason's brother, who he's fluent in Spanish and English, like he invited, I think, like Jason's family over for dinner one night at the hotel. And this was like, I think the first month after I moved, and not many of them speak any English. And I remember sitting at dinner and I had never felt so stupid before. And I felt like a deaf and a mute person. And I hate not being able to communicate, especially with his family. And so I remember at dinner, they said gato. And I remember thinking that means cat. And I just like held on to the fact that they talked about a cat sometime in like the 5 hours they were there. And after that night, I was like, okay, I have to learn Spanish. Like, I cannot handle it. Like, I can't be this person. And so for 6 months, I would study every day for 4 to 6 hours by myself because I like to learn on my own. And then from there, I would just practice, and I carried a notebook with me everywhere I went. And I would go out to stores by myself, go to the bank by myself to force myself to interact more with locals because Jason speaks like perfect English. And that's pretty much how I learned.
And
Yeah,
that's
it
how it's
worked.
done. It's how it's
Yeah,
done. I mean,
exactly.
people often are asking for tips on how to learn a language better. And the simple truth of it is that it's just a lot of work. It's just
Yeah,
a lot of work and study and
yeah,
practice and failure and
yeah,
more of that and more of that, and that never stops. And you continue to make
exactly.
mistakes. even once you can communicate with people.
Of course, yeah.
It's
It
just the way it
really,
is.
yeah, like there is no like
There's no
fast track.
shortcut. Yeah.
There's no shortcut. Like honestly, if you don't put in the work, you're not gonna learn. Like you're not just going to be a sponge and you can't just like watch like Dora the Explorer in Spanish and just like absorb it all. Like that's not how it works. Like you have to get out there and put yourself out there and do it. Like if you don't do it, like people always tell me like, oh, but I'm afraid of messing up, or I'm afraid that I have an accent, or that I sound stupid. I'm like, it doesn't matter. We all go through this. Every person who immigrates to another country and has to learn the country's language does it. My parents learned English when they moved to the US. I mean, my grandma, when she was like 70, learned English when she moved to the US, and she only spoke Mandarin and Taiwanese. There's no excuse for not learning another language, even if it's really hard for you, even if you're slower. There's just, it doesn't matter. You just have to practice and do it, and there's no excuse. Yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. Like, have you seen that Shia LaBeouf video where he just goes, do it, just do it? Like, that's, I mean, so I don't want to yell it out, but
So yesterday afternoon, I was reading your My 10 Feet blog page, and I saw a really awesome article that outlines what to pack for Costa Rica. What stood out to me most was actually a list of what not to bring to Costa Rica. Some of the items on that list were like expensive jewelry, high heels. I mean, did you bring those things with you when you came? When you first moved down?
maybe I might have. And then I realized I would never need like high heels. Even like we lived in Heredia for like 2 to 3 months. I and like never wore the high heels because the sidewalk, they don't really have sidewalks and the road is so bad. I mean, I probably would have broken an ankle. And yeah, like for the expensive jewelry, like now that we live on the coast and you know, we like to surf and go to the beach and I garden a lot. We have dogs. Like even my wedding ring, I don't really wear it that much because I don't want it to get dirty. I don't want it to fall off when I'm surfing or catching a wave or something. So just for people who, if they want to have like an adventurous, you know, outdoorsy vacation, like I had a friend and she brought her wedding ring because that she just normally always does, and she just left it in her purse the whole time, you know, because when you're in the ocean, I mean, you don't want to lose it. My brother lost his wedding ring snorkeling in Hawaii, and you know, things like that happen when you're, you know, zip lining or horseback riding or whatever. So
Did you come down with a few suitcases, or did you go all out and get a shipping container?
no, I think I brought 2 suitcases. Yeah, I didn't get a shipping container because I mean it was just me, and like I didn't quite know what to expect, so I didn't bring like a whole ton of stuff. I just kind of brought like the things that I thought I would need in the moment and I didn't use. Like I think a whole suitcase. I think I just like left it at his mom's house for a really long time. I was like, I don't need this anymore. Um, so yeah, I probably should have done more research on that part, but you know, it's one of those things you learn as you go. And I was 23. I wasn't thinking about like expensive kitchen knives or like fancy linens and stuff like that. Like I didn't, you know, that was not my priority back then.
In a way, that's one of the like really good things about traveling or like moving country when you're young. Like you haven't like stored anything up yet, you know. You haven't like compiled a whole bunch of unnecessary things yet because you're just too young.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
What was the first town that you actually lived in, and had you been to that town before?
Well, it's hard to say. Okay, so the first town that we had rented an apartment in San Isidro de Heredia, like 2 months before I moved, and that's where we were going to live. We bought a lot of furniture and everything. So when I first moved to Costa Rica, we were only there for like, I think 3 weeks actually, because Jason's brother, who he lives in Coco, in Patches of Coco, and he is the main doctor in that area for the advice. And he had a friend who owned a hotel in Coco, and she was looking for a new hotel manager. So he asked us if we'd be willing to take this opportunity because Jason also quit the job that he was working at in San Jose, And so we were both looking for something. And so we said, yeah, why not? Like, it's an opportunity. Let's see what happens. It's something different. We never lived at the beach before. So like 2 or 3 weeks later, I think we packed up all of our stuff and we moved to Guanacaste after that. And we were in Coco for like 3 years, kind of off and on, like 2 years full time, like all year round. And then another third year, we were hopping in between places, but in Coco for most of that year.
So Coco, the Coco Hermosa area, this is where my wife and I have lived for the last 4 years. And it's kind of a love it or hate it type of area for a lot of people because there is a lot of retirees. Um, you know, uh, different people complain about different things. Yeah, we absolutely
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
And there's a bunch of young families now, and that is obviously the chapter of life we're in, which is super fun. What did you think when you moved here as a 23-year-old?
Not what I expected at all. Like you said, is a lot of retirees. And I think that was like we really enjoyed our time in Coco, and we actually go back often because his brother's still there. We have friends who live there, and we love to go around the Gulf. Like we like to go to Witches Rock and Bat Island, and the snorkeling and all that. And one day, hopefully, we should go to Witches Rock to surf together. Just saying.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I saw your surfing videos and I was like, holy crap, this guy knows what he's doing. Definitely when I first moved there, it was not what I expected at all. And it was honestly like kind of hard for me the first year because I literally didn't meet anyone like my age. Um, and it was my first year there, like being alone most of the time because Jason was managing the hotel, and we lived there for like 6 months, but then we moved out because we came upon another agreement. And so it was, I think it was a good first place for me to start because even though it was hard, I had to learn really fast. So that made me learn like the language and like how to get around by myself and like how to do things by myself like really, really fast. And I wasn't like just moved to a community where like everyone was like me or and like only spoke English or like only did the same things and stuff like that. So it really made me like get out of my shell. Um, I think like I mean we wouldn't live there again just because like we bought a property and a house somewhere else that we enjoy living more. But we do really like to visit that area, and it has changed since I was there the first time in 2010. It has changed. Like the community has grown. There's definitely more young families, more restaurants. Because back then, oh my gosh, finding somewhere to eat, it was like two choices. Like for good food, and it was expensive, and it still is expensive. And like supermarkets were expensive, and so. But I think now it's a lot. It's a lot. It's grown a lot. It's a lot better. It's a lot nicer than how it was in 2010. So, and it is. I feel like Coco does have a good community, for young families and retirees. So,
You guys
yeah.
live in Villarreal, and that is here in Guanacaste, very close to Tamarindo,
Hmm.
which is Tamarindo is kind of like one of the hubs of surfing for the whole of Costa Rica, kind of especially the northern half of Costa Rica. It's one of the main hubs. And
Hmm.
yeah, you guys live near some of the best surf beaches, but also like many amazing, amazing things. Like you can get to lots of really cool places from Villarreal like pretty quick. Can you tell us what a typical day looks like for you and Jason?
Well, it's kind of changed a little for this year. Um, so I guess like I don't know, I hate saying like pre-COVID, but I mean like yeah, it is true. Like before, like Costa Rican borders were closed and the pandemic was announced. A typical day, I mean, we have an office on our property, and back then we actually had 3 employees, so we would work in the office. And we work like normal people. Like we would go to the office from like 7 to 8 till about 5 or 6, and then sometimes on the phone at night as well. Like we actually are in the office quite a bit. like every year is different for us. So it's hard to say like what we do every single day because sometimes we have new projects. Like in 2016, we actually did Vamos a Tuisear with the ICT. And so they sent us out like every 3 weeks, we went out for a week and we were going all around the country. So like we were out like all the time and literally every day we were going to a new hotel, a new place, whatever to do the filming for them. And then in the last 3 years, we've been focusing just on the blog and not taking like any outside clients anymore because we really wanted to focus on our own project. But I mean, now we unfortunately don't have as many employees. Now it's just me and Jason again. But we go to the office, like we are usually on there by 7 to 8. We answer a ton of emails, and messages from everybody. And usually now in November, like last October starting, we're going out a little bit more around the country. So we did like a couple trips. I got my PADI open water scuba diving certification. We have another trip, hopefully tomorrow if the weather works out. So we're slowly, gradually like starting to get out a little bit more because we do need to update all the content that we have on the blog. Like things have changed since last year. So every month, especially in the rainy season, we try to go to like 1 or 2 places and always try to go to a new place. And then there's, of course, like the places we always go to update content, which is like the main places in Costa Rica, like La Fortuna, Manuel Antonio. I mean, we live by Tamarindo, so it's easy for us to update Puerto Viejo and San Jose, especially. But I mean, a typical day, yeah, we wake up, go to the office, we play with our 2 dogs, take them for a run or something, try to surf as much as possible, depending on the tide. That really like kind of makes our schedule. So sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, but we try to surf at least 1 to 2 hours as many days as we can. If we go to Tamarindo or Avellanas usually, and then come home and, make dinner and play with the dog some more. And yeah, that's us. I mean, we're not that much different from a normal working person.
What have been some of the highlights? And you can even refer to a couple of specific articles, if you like, which we can link on our website when we go live with this episode.
I mean, I have to say, I've enjoyed every place we've been to in Costa Rica. And I think one of the greatest things about Costa Rica is it is a small country, but it's very diverse in the ecosystems and the landscapes and things like that. So you can definitely experience a lot of different things when you're in the country. So I've definitely enjoyed everywhere we've been. There's definitely some places I like more than others. But I think, oh my gosh, sorry if I take a really long time for this, but it's been a lot of I mean, like places we've been to and everything.
You've been to a lot of places, so
Yeah.
you can take your time, and you can even just spout the first ones that come to your head, because you've probably visited a few hundred distinct places in Costa Rica, maybe more, maybe in the thousands. It's a lot of, I don't know how many locations. Maybe you should count one day, but
I know I should.
But I'm sure it's like a good amount of the tourism in this country and just unique places you and Jason have seen.
Yeah, and I also feel, me personally, I feel especially lucky and very fortunate because um, Jason is Costa Rican and he does have, he used to work in tourism companies and a long time ago, all his life. So I feel very lucky because I have been able to meet a lot of different Costa Ricans around the country and a lot of more remote places and, like rural places that I think not a lot of people get to experience because a lot of people don't have a lot of time in Costa Rica. It's the same when we travel to other countries, but we're not able to have those experiences when we go out, but I feel very lucky that I can have them here. So definitely one of the highlights. Well, Well, in terms of like activities, because we're adventurous people, we like to be outdoors and everything. Um, I really enjoyed uh, whitewater rafting on the Pacuari River. I have done whitewater rafting before outside of Costa Rica, and I have done several in Costa Rica. But the Pacuari River, there's something special about it where it's almost like surfing, but like it's so pristine that you just focus on like going through the rapids and having fun and like enjoying all the nature that's around you, because there are some whitewater rafting in Costa Rica where you like go by farms or you're like going all parallel to the highway or something. So it kind of ruins like the experience of like, oh, a nature outdoor adventure. Whereas like Macquarie River, it's just so pristine. And I remember like one of the times that we went there, I had been wanting to see a rainbow toucan for like ever. But where we live, we don't see them, and they're harder to see because they're shy. They like to go really high. And I remember rafting down the waterfall, and there was a toucan like right there, and I was just so excited, and I thought that was a special moment. Um, so that was really fun for like outdoor adventure. That was really cool. I really enjoyed uh, taking my parents on a boat ride around the Gulf, the Papagayo Gulf, because it's always been like that's like me and Jason's I think like favorite place in Costa Rica is the Papagayo Gulf. We've gone there like countless times, and it's just so beautiful. Like all the beaches and the water and the wildlife. I don't know. Like I could go there so many times and never get bored of seeing them. But I think the first time that I took my parents out there and we watched the sunset, like going back, and my even though it was like kind of rocky, my mom was like, "This is so much fun," and like just seeing them have like a great time and like being out in the water, doing something different, enjoying something that we really like. That was pretty special. Well, one of the things I really do love about Costa Rican culture, and it sounds so cliche, but they really are like warm people. And it's not just like, oh, the front service desk person or like your tour guide or whatever. Yeah, they're really nice, and they're welcoming people, people, of course. But getting to know Jason's family and his friends, and like meeting the different Costa Ricans that we have met, they really try to make you feel as comfortable as possible when they welcome you into the home. And something that I really like about Costa Rican people is that they really don't have like a prejudice in the sense of like it doesn't matter if like you're from this country or you're from this country or whatever. They just see people as people, and they just, hey, like come to my house and have a beer, or like, oh, you really like pineapple smoothies? Yeah, I have pineapples like in my backyard or whatever. Come on over and I'll make you one. They don't, they don't come with like this prejudice of like, oh, she's Asian, like, and like I can only serve her dumplings or whatever, something like that, like the stereotypes. They don't really they have them here, but not like as strong.
Here, the only thing people would say to you, like they call me machillo, which is like little white boy,
Yeah,
right?
it's a little bit,
And
yeah.
they would
They call me
probably
Chanita.
they call you
Yeah.
Janita, which is little Chinese
Yeah.
girl. And
Yeah.
here, that is not racist.
No,
Like
it's
that,
so
it's just
normal.
it's so normal and it's so endearing. And when
Yeah.
those terms are used, they're used in like a loving way. Like
Yeah.
this is the physical feature that stands out the most about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about that, something I like, it like blew my mind when I first came here was that like couples would call each other like or gordo or gordito or whatever, but it was like in a cute way. And like the first time, like Jason would like, jokingly, I would be like, "Don't call me fat." I was like, "That you never call a female like a woman fat. Like you cannot say that to any." But then you just find out it's just so normal. Like they call like Jason's aunt, that's what she calls his uncle, like gordito. Like, like it's just so normal, but it's like endearing, and it's like a cute way to say it. And it's like very normal to be like, "Oh, my el gordo," or something like that. But it's like, it's not like in a offensive way. It's not trying to insult you or anything. It actually is like a, like, we call our dog Gordito now because he's a little chunky, you
A
know.
little
So
gordito. He's a little
yeah,
fatty.
he's a, yeah. So, but it's like in a nice, cute, endearing way, like you said. So in Taiwanese culture, it is very common to comments on your physical appearance, like, oh, but they kind of say in a way like, oh, so you got fat, you know, like, oh, you're kind of chubbier than you used to be, you know, like kind of in a way that's like that. Something's wrong, you know, something's a little different. But here it's just like, yeah, that's just, you know, like that's how you are. Like, I also, something I admire about Costa Ricans is they do have a lot of pride in themselves. You know, like, you can say, you know, whatever about Costa Ricans, and they know, they're like, yeah, you know, like we know we're kind of slow, like we're late, you know, we don't always give the best or whatever, whatever. But if you touch something that they think that they are good at and they're proud of, they're proud people, and I admire that about them because, you know, they stand up for what they really do believe in.
There's definitely a lot of patriotism here, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
pride for the country, and a lot of pride for the I kind of progressive things that the country's done, like
Mm-hmm.
the conservation. With
Mm-hmm.
25% of the country being protected by the government, there's, I think, almost another 25% in private farms and stuff. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
the numbers exactly, but
Yeah, me neither.
there's a huge amount of the country that's protected, and people are really proud of that, you know. And like, there's a lot of clean energy. People are really proud of that
Yeah,
they've got this reputation for being like relaxed and happy people. People are proud of that.
yeah,
Like, people are proud to show their best side
yeah,
to 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 everyone each day, and it's really
yeah,
nice. It's nice to be given,
yeah,
like, yeah, it's cool.
yeah.
We're gonna wrap up in just a sec.
Okay.
I wanted to ask just a couple more things.
Yeah, I mean, go for it. I have time. So.
So from time to time, you head back to the US and you know, head abroad for travels. When you land back in the States, what's the first thing you like to do?
Hug my dog. Well, but after I hug my parents, of course. But hug my dog just because I got this dog in 2009, like the year actually right before I met Jason, and I always had a plan to bring her with me when I went to vet school and everything. So she was my dog, but I had to leave her when I moved. But my parents take such good care of her. But that's usually the first thing I do is hug my dog. And the second thing I usually do is I'll go to Trader Joe's and go nuts because I am obsessed with Trader Joe's and I miss it. And I'll just go crazy there. And then I go to another local bakery in my town that is amazing. She made my wedding cake, and she's just so good. And I like drool over her cake and miss it every single day. um, we really love food, so we'll always talk about like what we miss eating. Oh yes, I grew up eating Asian food because my mom is a great cook, and she makes all sorts of Chinese and Taiwanese dishes. And so Asian food in Costa Rica is not their strong suit, I would say. Um, and so I definitely miss that a lot. So usually the things I do when I go back to see my parents is like just go all out and all the Asian food and go crazy so I can get my fill of it.
So there's an opportunity for anyone listening. If you know how to cook delicious Asian food, then
Yeah.
come down to Costa Rica, start a
Yes.
franchise business with the best Asian food. I know I shouldn't be saying, well, I can say Asian food. It covers the range. But
Yeah.
any of that
Any Asian
food,
food.
if you know how to cook it and make it delicious, it will sell here.
Exactly. Actually, like
There's definitely demand.
there's a man, and actually, like one of my like kind of like dream side jobs is like, okay, if I ever have time one day, if I retire from the blog or whatever, I'm gonna make a dumpling and bubble tea stand here because there's no bubble tea and or dumplings.
What should people type into Google to find you the quickest possible way?
I mean, you could just type my tan feet, just like our blog name is just mytanfeet.com. TAN like tan. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I enjoyed talking with you, and I hope anyone who is listening, this is helpful or entertaining for you, whether you plan to move here or just visit or just interested in Costa Rica in general. We hope that you guys do at least visit here if you don't move, and we hope that you guys have a great time here.
Sam, thank you so much for your time. You've got a unique story of meeting a Costa Rican and moving down here and starting a business that ended up being perhaps more successful than you'd ever imagined, and turned into a lifestyle and an ability to see this country like probably no other foreigner has ever experienced. So, and you're only 31.
I'm 31. I'll be 32 in 2 months, but
Samantha, so many more years of enjoying Costa Rica ahead. It's cool.
yes, I really hope so.